specifically to General Secord about the issue of terrorism. And I don't know that he ever approached them for contributions. It may well be that he did. I just don't remember it. And you may be able to show me other notes in there where they were approached. I don't know that they ever made a contribution. I did not ever approach any.
Did you ever meet with officials of any other country for the purpose of discussing contributions to the Contras?
Oh, sure. Not just financial contributions. I mean, I met with the senior military person from Country 4 to get surface-to-air missiles. And I did that with the full knowledge of the FBI and the National Security Advisor. I mean, one of the things that kind of bothers me is that this wasn't all done as some terrible, nefarious thing. It was done as part of a covert operation. And I'd like to make a note about that one right there. I was very concerned about the meeting I had with number 4, that someone not misunderstand why I was meeting with that person. And I asked for specific surveillance from the FBI on it. And they provided, as I understand it, that kind of protection. The director of the FBI was aware of that meeting. It was not some deep, dark secret.
Was that a meeting in which you were requesting a contribution of surface-to-air missiles, or were you seeking to facilitate the transportation of surface-to-air missiles that had been purchased by somebody else?
I was actually seeking to facilitate the transportation, but I was hoping I could turn it enough that they'd like to make the contribution. I will admit that.
So you discussed the possibility of a contribution with representatives of Country 4?
Well, when I say contribution, I'm speaking specifically of surface-to-air missiles, which at that point in time, the resistance was being devastated by the Soviet-supplied Cuban-flown Hind helicopters. And we were looking desperately for surface-to-air missiles that could be provided to the democratic resistance. And that means Country makes the kind that's
and did you ask
useful
them
for that purpose. No. Would you repeat the question, Counsel?
Yes. Did you ask representatives of Country 4 at that time to contribute SA-7s?
I don't believe I actually baldly asked them to contribute. I had a if I can just back up on that whole thing just for a second. That particular place was a good source for these weapons. We were concerned, I was concerned, I went to Admiral Poindexter and told him my concerns about the meeting. We knew that that was a good source for those weapons. I was concerned about the meeting because I did not want anyone in our intelligence services or others to misunderstand the purpose of the meeting. And so what I did is I asked Admiral Poindexter, and I believe Mr. McFarland too, to please make sure that the Attorney General and the Director of the FBI was aware that the meeting was going to take place. And I believe that they did so for obvious purposes. And I think that's, without saying more about...
My question is just a very simple one. Did you ask for Country 4 to make a contribution of SA-7s?
Not in so many words. We had a long philosophical discussion over lunch about Soviet hegemony, the kinds of things that I thought would be attractive and of concern to him. He shared my concerns, and I made him aware that there was a purchase underway, that these things were desperately needed, and he then facilitated that. But he didn't make a contribution.
Did he ever? He never made a contribution.
Not that I'm aware of.
Did you have any other meetings with representatives of Country 4 in which you sought a contribution?
Not that I recall, no.
Any other countries?
At some point, I encouraged others, although I did not have the meeting, to see if we could obtain radio equipment from Country 8. And
who did you encourage to do that?
I'm not entirely certain, but I think it was General Singlaub.
And on whose authority did you do that?
Well, with my superiors. You know,
Who?
Admiral
Mr. McFarland?
Poindexter. I think no. By then, I think it was Mr. Admiral Poindexter.
Did that prove successful?
I don't recall. I don't think so.
Any others?
Well, Brunei, of course. Brunei had been under discussion for a long time.
Any others?
No, I think that's it. Now,
Yeah.
eventually, I talked to, this is very late in the whole process, to a senior person from Country 1, who then indeed provided some weapons.
Physical weapons free of charge?
Yes.
Now, I've been asking you only about your own meetings and contacts. Did you ask any other person to approach any foreign country other than ones you've already testified about?
Well, I, of course, asked Dr. Segur to establish the meetings. And I believe at the time I probably told him why, with the ones that I met with, that it would be countries 3 and 4. I may have asked him to arrange a meeting with some representatives of Country 5. I don't recall specifically at this point, but I may have. And I'm not aware that others outside or elsewhere were doing it, other than the fact that I know that Mr. Abrams, Ambassador Abrams, eventually made a contact with Brunei.
Are you aware of any contacts made by other people in the U.S. government, whether or not at your request or direction, to approach other countries for contributions to the Contras?
Not that I can recall specifically, other than I did talk to Admiral Moreau at length about a trip that was being made by a senior U.S. official to Country 4, and I believe that contact was made while he was on that trip. And there's a country that's not on your list, so I don't know how to refer to it, but I did, I recall now that I did make contact with a senior official in another country on that matter, and we can develop some convention for how we talk about it.
We've simply been writing it on a sheet of paper, folding it over, and handing it to the chairman. And will you describe that contact?
It was Country 10.
I'm sorry, Mr.
Country
Chairman?
10. Would you describe that contact, please, sir?
I met with that senior official in a foreign country, not his, not ours, as part of a broader effort, but it included assistance that he may be able to provide in the case of support for the Nicaraguan resistance. There was a broader context in that conversation, but that was certainly a part of it. And no final arrangement was ever consummated because shortly thereafter I was reassigned back to the Marine Corps.
And were you seeking then a financial contribution or a contribution of some kind of materiel?
It was not so much financial, certainly, as more a operational support. And I guess maybe I don't want to sound like I'm dissembling at all, because I went to the officials in Country 7 and others of Country 7's neighbors frequently asking for operational support and getting it. Not financial, not material necessarily, but assistance in operational support for everything from airplanes to places to park them, things like that. And so I was the person who did those.
And on whose authority did you do those?
My superiors.
Is this just Admiral Poindexter or Admiral Poindexter and Mr. McFarland?
Oh, no, this all started way back in 1984. So it started when Mr. McFarland was there, and it continued on through Admiral Poindexter's succession as National Security Advisor in 1986.
Would you turn to Exhibit 80? That's a page from one of your notebooks, February 4.
What year is that?
I believe this is 1985. And I take it that's a call from Claire George?
I take it that it is, but there's more. I can't understand what this thing says with all the things blacked out. Did I black those out when I gave it to you?
No, you did not. What's blacked out is the name of Country 5 and an official of Country 5.
Okay.
It refers to a contribution, possible contribution of $2 million, does it not?
Right.
Can you describe that conversation?
Well, I can't recall specifically. You say this is 1985, 4 February 1985?
I believe so. We're checking it right now.
Okay. I don't recall it specifically. I do recall in general that there was some conversation with Country Number 5. I don't believe that Country 5 ever made that contribution. I may well be wrong, but I think that we talked to them several times about operational support and encouraged them to provide or sell materiel to the resistance. I don't recall that actually transpired.
But this was something which was brought to your attention by a representative of the CIA.
Sure. I mean, they knew what I was doing. I mean, they knew that I was the guy that was in contact with the resistance and was out trying to help them. In compliance with Boland, I would point out.
Now, my next question is, you've indicated that